Hey there, I'm Dimitry and I'm a designer in Rive. Today I'm going to show you how to build the full Popup UI from scratch as a part of a bigger redesign for a website. We'll play around with layouts, add some interactivity, and get it all polished up and ready for production. Once it's done, I export the Rive file and pass it over to my buddy Ross, who drop it to the website. Okay, this is what we should have in the final, and I keep it as a reference. Let's create new artboard. Click in A, about this size. Let's make background black. And I usually start with the text and just click T for text and write the text. This is going to be for title. This text is going to be for message. Let's make the header thicker, like semi-bold. And this one, just change the transparency, I think, to make a nice visual hierarchy. And I basically select them and click Shift-L. As we change the size of the layout, you can see how text behaves. This is about correct. You can also notice how every single text create the text layout around, and we should keep it as is. And if we go to the text layout, it should says hug and hug here. Well, next, let's create a button. For the primary button, I usually use the same text as I use for header. It's a H1. I just click and write primary. And instead of drawing the rectangle for the button shape, as we usually did before layouts, like this one, I use some rectangle, I make the round corners, I change the color and stuff. It's like button is done. However, when we change the text to something else, it's not flexible. It's not change the size depending on the text. It's not so flexible. So I'm gonna use layouts to create the shape of the button. For these purposes, I create like double layout. First layout, Shift-L, I create for text layout, but I can't work with it yet. Next one, I go and create the row, and basically Shift-L, Shift-L, create double layouts, and we gonna work with the row. First of all, change it to the hug. So when I change the padding here, you can see how it changed the shape. When we change the text, we're going to change the size of the button. Let's make it 20, and here's like 16. Let's make the fill and strokes for background. It's okay to create just one fill. I'm gonna make it nice blue and readable. And I change the corner radius, for example, for, I think 40 is fine. Yeah, and as you can see, I use different padding here, because if I just change it to 16, like equal to each other, you can see it's visually feels incorrect, because we have very strong round corners here. How to check it correct or is it incorrect? I'm gonna add some strokes here, like stroke, just to test. Let's make it visible. And when I change the stroke, you can see when I touch the letters, like M letter, for example, here, our P letter gonna outside. So I go and increase padding about like maybe like 20, 21, let's make it 22. And in this case, our outline, like this stroke, doesn't touch the letters. Now I can remove it, and we get absolutely optically correct button. Also, I'm going to click on the text inside and change the properties there. For example, I don't want to wrap text if it's very long. I want to make it long, I want to change it to the center as well. And also I'm gonna go to the row and change the layout position to the center. So when I move this layout, my text always on the middle. And if I change the text, it's always move the layout in the correct way. Let's call this button primary. And I'm gonna create the secondary button. I just copy and paste it. Write the secondary here. And make it gray. Instead of making gray, I usually use transparency for the white or black color. In this case, I'm gonna make it white and add some transparency here. And mixing with the background, it creates the gray color. And if background changes, for example, for blue color or yellow color, it changes accordingly. Let's group these two buttons. Just select 1 and 2 and click Shift L. Rename this layout for buttons. And combine it with the text layout here. Shift L. Rename this layout to the window. To check out how our current layout looks like, we can go here and click to Layouts. As you can see, we see all boundaries of layout right now. Let's remove it for now. So we almost get our window here. As you can see, we have the background of this window here. I can create the background, strokes, and all of this stuff for layouts. I select my window layout here and create the new fill. Again, I'm gonna use white with the transparency, about 10% maybe. And now we see the background for our window. I remember our gap's about 16 pixels, and let's go and add padding here and there. Let's create the round corners. To check the correct round corners, I also can recommend to use stroke and increase it. See, my round corners is incorrect here. Doesn't look right. And I'm gonna increase it like so. Right now I want to make my button equal because it's not really understandable which button is primary because secondary button looks bigger than primary. I go inside of this layout called buttons and I want to make it fill this window. Change it to the fill. Go inside each button, this button, change it to the fill as well. Says try to occupy the whole space. And I go to the primary button and change fill as well here. Now when they're equal, we can easily change the size of the window. Let's make the window more visible. Go to the window, fills and strokes. Let's add some stroke. I'm gonna add some white stroke to make it more visible, but with a transparency. And also let's go and add some glow effect because it's a glass window. I'm gonna duplicate my fill, click on the feather icon here. It's automatically showing me the feather option. And instead of outer, I change it to the inner. And we already see beautiful glow here. I'm gonna reduce it slightly and maybe increase the transparency. Like so. Now it feels like text is very close to the corners, and let's change it. I click to my layout with a message, and change the padding to the 16 and maybe 10 from the top. Again, we can test visual distances with the strokes. Looks correct to me. Or another option, we can blur the text and see how it goes. Yeah, visually it's about the equal. Now I want to make this pop-up window production ready. Well, from backend we can change the color and text. How to make it? I click on Artboard here, go to the data bind, and create the new model. I already created the model here, so my new model, I'm gonna call it like view model 2. Switch to the data here and rename this view model to the tutorial. So I want to change the text from the backend, and to change the text I should bind the text to the strings. Click plus here and create the string, and call it accordingly. Header, text, secondary and primary. Now we should bind it. Go to the text, you can use command and click on it, expand this text, go to run. Text run basically what exactly we wrote on the text, and we can change it, animate it, and so on and so on. In this case, I'm gonna bind it. Go to data bind and select the property. Header. If it's green, all good, all correct. And do the same with the all text inputs. Now, if we click play, you can see how all our text is changing. So I can go to the data, click to the tutorial here, to our view model, and change all the values here. For example, for header, I can write the text header. For text, I can write any text. And for button, I can write any text for button. Let's also change the color. Go to the data and create the color value. Click on the button with the command and bind data to the color. Like so. Click play. And now we can change the color. Seems all works just fine. Okay, next, we should make this button clickable. For this, I go to my data panel and add some trigger here. Let's rename it to the primary. Then click on primary button, go to animate, and go to listeners. Click plus here, and you see some sort of rules here. Now I go in and select my primary trigger here, and every time when I click on the button, it should fire this primary trigger. However, right now it doesn't do anything because I should select the rule how exactly it should behave. Next, I should go here, and in this case, I just select click, and every time when I click, it should fire the trigger. When I click here and I see data, I should see the primary trigger fires. As you probably notice, it's not a lot of animation here happening. To create a visual reaction, I should at least create 2 states. Let's rename this state to the normal and animate what we want to animate. In this case, I just want to animate transparency. And to do so, I just click on this key here. Next, I duplicate my state and rename it to pressed. And on pressed state, I change the transparency parameter to 50%. Next, I click on the state machine and drag my pressed state here. To make a transition between states, I just drag and drop and make a connection between states, back and forward. Now we should make a rule how state normal go to the pressed state. So I click on this arrow here and add rule. If my primary trigger is fired, it should go to pressed. And let's make a transition to the back. I'm gonna add some duration, like half of the second, because I want to make my click extremely responsive. But when I release the mouse, it fades to the back. And now when I press play, all should work just fine. Let's check data. When we click, primary is triggered, and also it works the opposite way. When we trigger the primary from the back end, it should play the animation. It's quite useful if we use hardware controls such as volume button, for example. Create new layer and repeat the same for the secondary button. Now it's time for export. Click on Artboard and remove background. Go to Data tab, Tutorial, and don't forget, click here to export instance. Click Export and export for runtime. And now it's time to get this file into production. Hey Ross.
Hello, I'm Ross. I'm going to show you how to control this Rive file in code. But first of all, a little housekeeping. Let's go over to our view model. And if we're going to be controlling any of these properties in code, we need to make sure that they all have different names. It doesn't matter whether or not they're different types, they all have to have different names. So I can see here that we have a trigger called primary and a string called primary. So I'm just going to change this property's name to primary_string. That is the only bit of housekeeping we need. So now I'm ready to export my .riv. I'm using early access, so I'm going to click I like to live dangerously. And now I'm going to save my .riv in the same folder as my HTML file. Now I can open up my IDE and let's have a quick overview of this code. I just got this code from GPT. It's very simple, but there are a few tweaks that need to be made. First of all, up here, we have our CSS. This basically controls the style of the web page and the position of our element on the page. I have set the width and the height of the canvas to be the same as the artboard width and height. Down here on line 29, we are loading the Rive runtime. And down here in the body, we have a script that creates a new Rive object and applies it to a variable called R. Now, within this Rive object, you need to make sure that the source is the exact same name as your .riv. You also need to make sure that the artboard is the exact name, and of course make sure that your state machine name is the same as well. Mine are all correct because we have our design showing in the window. However, if I try to click on the design and interact with it, you'll see that nothing happens. This is because the interactivity in our design is being handled by data binding, which we need to activate in the code. So create a new line under autoplay and type auto bind with a capital B, true, comma. Then reload the page, and you'll see that now data binding has been activated. I can interact with the button, and of course the text strings have all been updated as well. But before we control any of these strings in the code, you may notice that vector feathering has not been activated. This is because up here, where we load the Rive runtime, GPT has given us the latest canvas runtime. However, this runtime is not compatible with vector feathering. We need to use a different runtime, and that is WebGL2, and we need to reload the page again. And you'll see that we have that nice inner vector feathering around our box. Now it's time to control these strings. In your code, where it says on load, create a new line, and I'm going to create a new variable, VMI. This stands for View Model Instance. And what we're going to do is go into our Rive object, so R dot, and we're going to retrieve the View Model Instance that Dimitry exported earlier by tapping on the box up here, Export Instance. So now we have loaded the Rive object's View Model Instance into the variable VMI, and this means that we can control any view model property that was contained within that instance. So new line, and I'm going to say vmi.string bracket quotes, and now we need to type in the specific name of the string that we want to control. In the Rive file, the top string is called header with a capital H. So I'm going to type in header, and I'm going to change its value to quote, hello there. And you can see over here in this window that that has been updated. Now let's control this string. So I'll say vmi.string text. And I'll set the value to be, oh wow, here is some text. And of course, we can control the strings of the buttons as well. So new line, vmi.string, primary underscore string, and secondary. And of course, we can still interact with the file just as it was designed by Dimitry.